we hold a referendum, and we all know how those pan out. So I would suggest that the council considers the agenda per se, in principle, of all 14 proposals, and consider them as whether they should be rejecting them either in part or in total. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Good point to make. Thank you. Chris Clark?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Colin. I'm not sure if this falls into planning, but if it does, I apologise, but I'll read it anyway because I think it's important. I was going to say, and I'll read it out as written to Colin earlier. It's like, there's concern among some parishioners that the cost and scope of the project to develop a building for the community shop is going to be materially different from the plan and cost that this was agreed upon by the village. And this is where the question comes in, and if this is the case, that the council, having first established and communicated to the parish the true cost of the building project, will go back to the parish before any further expense is incurred or construction takes place, to seek a new or reconfirmed mandate to carry on with the project, or to consider alternative options within the budget that had been agreed. And furthermore, I'd just like to say I do support the community shop, I really do, but believe that alternative building structures should be considered, which would bring the project within the original budget, provide the outcome everyone's seeking.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Paul?
Oh, Paul's not here.
Oh, I see. Okay, do you want to go then, Caroline?
Yep, I'll go. Right, mine is also to do with the shop, and I'll read what I sent to Owen earlier this week. Oh, if I can find it, it's gone. Hold on. I'm writing to the Parish Council to express my concerns with regards to the management of the new proposed building for the community village shop. Since the inception of this idea, I have never thought of it as a long-term viable project. I was one of the very few who attended the parish hall event when the village was asked to vote on the new proposals. I was also one of the 4 people who voted against it. Less than 200 residents voted, less than a quarter of the village, so not a fair representation. I recognise that the Parish Council has ticked all the appropriate boxes in regards to securing the government loan for this project, but do not believe that the majority of residents are aware of the fact that they will be paying for it through increased council taxes. Since then, I have watched with ever-growing concern at the plans for the shop. I am listing my reasons for concern below. Conflict of interest. Members of the Parish Council owning shares in the shop should not be allowed to vote on the future of the shop. The spiralling costs of the shop. As far as I can see, no budget has been set for this project. We were originally told that it would cost £80,000, then £120,000. What is the current estimate? I feel that the Parish Council have been extremely weak in insisting on accounts and projections for the shop. What are the demographics of those using the shop? What happens when that generation grows out? Newspapers were always a driver for customers, but this is a dying trade. How many under 55s buy a daily newspaper? What is the true proportion of villagers using the shop? Just ask you lot, how many of you go in there on a regular basis? The legacy of the building. Are the village going to be left with a very expensive white elephant? The Parish Council is planning to enter into a 25-year loan at a time of spiralling interest rates, saddling this debt onto the residents. We are told it is only a few pounds a year, but what happens if the shop cannot maintain paying their very reduced rent? A few pounds becomes a few more. At the moment, no one seems to be questioning this, probably because anyone who dares to publicly challenge the shop are labelled anti-community. I do not feel that the voice of opposition to this project has been heard. What will happen when the current shop committee decide to retire? Is there a younger generation to take on the project? The shop always seems to be looking for new volunteers. What happens when they cannot find any new ones? If the Parish Council is going to saddle future villagers with the debt, these questions need to be properly investigated. The return of the post office. The post office will never reinstall a counter in Brent Knoll, so let's start being honest about that. And I just wanted to say that I ran the village shop on a commercial basis for over 13 years. So I understand the importance of village communities. A shop is only sustainable if there is a commercial need for it now and in the future. We're surrounded by shops. Since I arrived in Brent Knoll, 6 shops have been built within 5 miles, but 2 have closed. Both of them were in Brent Knoll. Is there really a future for this project?
Thank you. There are no more speakers. David, would you like to respond to that, just as a matter of interest?
Well, it's difficult for me to respond directly, but all I can say at the moment is that, yes, as a commercial venture, it has its risks like any other commercial venture. It has its advantages in the fact that it is run by voluntary service and therefore doesn't have a large bill for wages and so on. I think this needs to be looked at as much more than a commercial venture. It is a community venture, and is a venture which provides a social centre to the village, which is available daily. And I think by starting at this stage, or whenever we get going eventually, to have a shop which may or may not mould into something more social, we don't know. And we just have to wait and see. I don't really have any more response at the moment. I think that's just off the top of my head. But I would suggest we continue to support it and go forward.
Thank you, David. Thanks. Okay, no more speakers. So only planning items now going forward, please. Yes, first. Yes. Okay, my first, can I open our formal meeting now? Welcome to our main meeting, everyone. Thank you for all your support and patience over the past year. I've enjoyed being your chairman, and thank you for that privilege. It's now my position to invite proposals for the position of chairman. I would like to propose Bob Filmer, Councillor Bob Filmer, as your new chairman. I think, Bob, we need a wise head on some firm shoulders with this parish council. He's now able to take up the role because a lot of his Sedgemoor District Council positions have now moved across to Somerset, so he's got more time. He's got a wealth of experience, which I have observed with his planning meetings at Sedgemoor District Council, and I think he'll be a worthy chairman. Can I have a seconder for that proposal? Amanda? Any other nominations for chairman? Please signify that you accept that proposal, please. That's carried. And a majority. Thank you. Bob, congratulations. Give it a seat.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the members of the council for your support, and obviously we're going to have a busy year going forward, so hopefully we can all work together. If we move then to item 2 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We have an apology from Tracy Woods, who in fact her husband is suffering with COVID at the moment, so she decided very wisely it wasn't a good idea to go over, and I'm sure you agree with that. I have a letter here from Sarah Brigard, which I'd like to read out to you. In fact, it's a letter which she has asked me to read out. So, a few weeks ago, I wanted to share my vision of the future of the parish council with each of you, and see if that vision was something you also share. I was interested in giving more time and hopefully value applying my legal skills where useful, and fresh ideas for the benefit of the council and for the wider community of Brent Knoll. I had been asked if I was interested in the idea of standing as chair, and I had decided I was. However, I've recently been concerned over procedural matters in the council and conduct undertaken in a manner which has been, amongst other things, demeaning or non-inclusive. I think a divide exists within the council which is unhealthy and wholly unacceptable. I think the council must embrace the collective responsibility in working together and be open to different opinions, but work through them to secure the right outcomes for the village of Brent Knoll, whose voice we represent. We must be transparent and accountable above all else. I find all recent developments really hostile, and that is where my time and value was to be best added. For this reason, I sadly decided to stand down as a councillor with immediate effect. With kindest regards, Sarah Bugard. So Sarah wishes no longer to stand as a councillor, and this is her formal letter of resignation.
Thank you very much. Members obviously will, if you're in agreement, will write to Sarah to thank her very much for her time and the contribution she has made to the parish council while she's been with us. And obviously we'll look into where we move on that front later. Okay, declarations of interest, please. Are there any declarations that members have, please?
The shop and prejudicial interest on 0723 0011 Nightingale Farm.
Shop. Aidan?
Shop.
David?
Cunnery on planning 0723 0012.
Thank you. And from myself, I've got the normal declaration I need to make as a member of Somerset Council. Again, acknowledgement of dispensation I have with regard to the shop, and I have a prejudicial interest in terms of application 072310 because it's my next door neighbour. So we'll leave the room. Thank you. There's no further declarations. The next item is to elect a vice chairman for the forthcoming year. Can I ask for nominations, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose Councillor Tracy Woods as your Vice President, or Vice Chairman, sorry, I should say. I think she's a considered person and a young person capable of learning from the Parish Council and hopefully gaining chairmanship in the future. So I think she's a good choice. That's my proposal.
Thank you. Are there any other proposals? No, in which case could those indicate who are in support of that please show? And those against please show? And any abstentions? Thank you. So that is clearly carried, so Tracy is Vice Chair. So item 5 is a number of proposals that were referred to by the speakers earlier. I think we'll obviously take these items as they are on your agenda. John, would you like to introduce your proposal A?
I may. May I ask permission to read out a statement for myself? Chair.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Chair, new chair, fellow councillors, members of this parish. When I was elected as councillor 1 year ago, it was one of the proudest days of my life. Today, it's one of the saddest. I don't want to be a councillor anymore. I've got my good character to consider. I've been persuaded by family, friends, and some other councillors to stay on for now. I've also focused on some charity work recently and on purpose as a distraction. Stress is not something I really need anymore in my life. Since moving to Brent Knoll over 15 years ago, I have tried hard to make new friends in the village, to integrate and to be involved. My first foray into making a difference was probably starting the Brent Knoll Table Tennis Club, or restarting, to be correct, which I was reminded by an old guy from the village, around 10 years ago, which ran for a number of years until a combination of COVID and a lack of numbers closed our doors. I've also joined the tennis club, and I'm missing their committee AGM tonight. I can tell you where I'd rather be. Both of the clubs have helped me make some great new friends, young and old. Both of my local children have attended Brent Knoll Primary, so I stood and was elected as a parent governor for a number of years. I decided to put myself forward for the Brent Knoll Council as I wanted to make a difference to this village. I wanted to have my input at 48 with the skills and experience I've gained during my time on this planet. I've had a career or two. I've worked for the largest company in the world. I've also worked for some of the smallest. I've been to college, university, and I've travelled. I have been very lucky. I am not against the shop. I started the shop with a number of like-minded people. We opened the shop with my personal credit card. I want to see the shop do well. As proof, as a further gesture of my honesty, and in my family's support, my 2 children will make an offer to purchase 1 share in the future. I am fed up of reiterating that I am pro-shop. However, it appears to some in the village, you cannot be pro-shop, but be against certain aspects of the shop build, and the processes and the decisions to make the build happen at any cost. It is my personal view that we as a council are way beyond any mandate that we had in 2022. As I said earlier, I only wish to be allowed to have my input as a councillor and be able to give my thoughts freely as part of a fair democratic process that should be at play here. In the past few months, I've been subjected to numerous unpleasant emails, verbal comments, aggressive behaviour, I've been sworn at, I've had half-truths, I've had lies, I've been ghosted in emails and more. I've written numerous emails to the chair, our local district councillor and our clerk, as well as other fellow councillors. Many have just ignored it or turned a blind eye. In any paid business, I would have quit long ago. My name also appears of the proposers of tonight's proposals. In my year, we have never named proposers. Why? Just a new policy just for me? I am no yes man. I will not tolerate the behaviour and the current modus operandi anymore. What is the point of being a councillor if you can't represent all of the parishioners properly in this wonderful village? Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, the only point I would make, John, in terms of the reason your name is on the proposals today is because the proposals were submitted by yourself, and as you heard from one of the earlier speakers, it is very unusual to have a list of proposals that we have before us this evening, and they raise a number of issues. That's why it's in your name. So it is, otherwise everyone would have been wondering why it was there. So I don't think it is anything particularly unusual, other than the circumstances that you have, in the way that this was submitted, that's why it was done with your name. So I think if you'd like to take us through the proposals, if you still wish those to be considered this evening.
I do. So we can start with proposal A, if you like.
That sounds like a good place to start.
Fantastic, well, thank you. I can read proposal A, and I'd like to just throw it open to the rest of this council. The proposal is such. This council and clerk resolves to always invite all members of all working groups, as per our standing orders and the Nolan principles. It is wholly unacceptable for members to choose to invite some, but not other councillors, after they've been voted onto a working group. Working groups must remain great at all times.
Just to deal with a couple of things that I'd like to start with. Obviously there is a proposal at the start of that. There is then a number of comments that I made. In terms of working groups must remain quorate at all times, actually our standing orders do not mention the working parties or working groups. You may be confusing that with committees and subcommittees, but working groups do not have a quorate number, so therefore that couldn't be right. So I don't know whether you want it to be taken as a whole, this particular proposal, or whether it is the main element of it is asking that the council resolves that to always invite all members of working groups to meetings. But it can't be as per our standing orders because it isn't part of our standing orders, and the item at the end is wrong. So if it stands as it is, I don't think we could support it, but that's up to members. But it's up to you whether you wish to take the element of inviting all members as your proposal, or
I'll take that as the proposal, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in fact we have a proposal which is the council resolves to always invite members of working groups to working group meetings. Is that, you're happy with that as the proposal?
I'm happy with that as the proposal. Thank you.
Which I think generally is our normal policy anyway, so I can't see there would be. But any other comments from any other members before we move to a vote?
Does that not normally happen?
No.
That does normally happen.
Okay.
It is not abnormal for that to. Basically, we have a number of working groups, as members will know, some of which meet as meetings, a number of them don't ever meet. So things like the footpath working group, are individuals who go around and inspect footpaths and report back. But at other meetings, I believe there was one occasion where a member didn't make it to that particular meeting because there was a short. This was the particular meeting with the National Grid when they first found out there was a problem. But other than that, members are invited to working group meetings of the membership of that working group. It is not that all members are invited to a working group. It is the members of the working group who are entitled to go to that working group. That's the whole point of having one. Otherwise, you'd have a whole council meeting. Yeah, John.
So, I attended at Melina's request last week a meeting that was convened. Sadly, Sarah's no longer here, so I can't speak for Sarah. However, I gave her my time last week, and my understanding is that no flexibility was awarded to ex-councillor Sarah Regard, and she fought very hard to be at that meeting. I can show you emails that have been circulated, which are on this table, but probably don't need to say that she fought very hard. Also there made very interesting points about also attending the meeting. She would have made that meeting had some flexibility been given to last week's meeting. I gave up 3 hours of my time last week to help Melina be there, so that she could cover it, sadly, in Sarah's absence.
Yeah, I gave National Grid some options for meetings, and I appreciate that sometimes when you're dealing with utility companies, particularly National Grid, they've got very, very busy timetables. It's very hard for them to suddenly sort of spring dates out of the air. They gave me 3 or 4 dates, and the date that we had on the 27th of April was the only one in the end they could come up with. We tried to move it back to 10 AM to make it easier for Sarah to attend. They couldn't do that. The only time they could make was 2 PM. So we had an option. We could either go down 2 PM, and unfortunately it meant that one of our members couldn't make it, and that was unfortunate, or we cancelled the whole thing and tried to get another date at some time in the future, which might have gone on for several weeks. And I felt it was important for this whole council to get these things resolved sooner rather than later. And that is simply the reason why it happened the way it did.
Melina?
I know from conversations with Sarah that she provided you a time that she could not make, a date and a time, and when National Grid came back and said we can do this time, you should have just said, well no, one of the members can't, we need another time. Had it been Bob that was taking his dad to the hospital, I'm sure the time would have been changed.
Melina, I think that's not right.
I'm sorry, but I think it is.
That's very disingenuous, actually, Melina.
The situation is that we needed, the people who were critical to be there on that day were the National Grid engineers to tell us what was the situation. There were 2 of them, as you know. That was the time they could make it. We were aiming to get something done so that we could report back to this meeting so that members could make a decision on having some facts rather than just speculation. So it was important that meeting took place as quickly as it could, and that was the time that was available from them. It was not that anyone was deliberately excluded, it was that we had to promote the meeting to go ahead. John?
So, just to clarify, we had, until a few minutes ago, a fantastic legal brain on this team. We have treated her appallingly. If you cannot recognise that she has just quit, and she would have added something to that meeting, and probably added quite a lot to that meeting, for the sake of maybe an arrangement of maybe days or weeks. I can't clarify National Grid, I'm not in charge of their diary, but I would counter-argue that she would have added to that meeting, and she was part of that working group, and she deserved to be included if it was possible in a sensible time frame.
Thank you. Amanda?
I was just going to say, wasn't this proposal about inviting members, not fitting things or timings around? This was inviting people to be present if they wanted to, not the discussions about individuals who couldn't or couldn't make a meeting, because we're going to be here all night if this is the...
We have 3 hours.
That's right. So, I think you've obviously raised the issue, John, and you've made the proposition, which is that we have a resolution that members of working groups will be invited. Sorry?
All members.
It is not well,
I think that's
if
what
you
it's-
wish it.
No, all members of working groups,
Yes,
I think is what it says.
So all members of a working group will be invited to meetings of that working group. It is not that all members of any
No,
working
no.
group get invited to every.
No, you
otherwise-
just said members of the working group,
Yeah.
but it's all members
Okay,
of the working
all
group.
members of the working group will be invited to working groups, is the proposition.
That's what happens anyway.
It is. But the reason why so if members are happy that we've had that put forward as a proposal, are we happy that that is accepted? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Okay, so that is clearly carried. Number 2, number B, or letter B.
I can do very quickly with that one, but we should afford flexibility in time and place to those councillors. We kind of covered it already, but it would have been nice in this instance if some flexibility had been afforded to a fellow councillor.
Again, I see no problem with offering flexibility. You can't be so flexible in meetings. I mean, you have to. Options were given. Unfortunately, in this particular case, it didn't work out one way to make it. But I don't think that means that we have been inflexible in terms of trying to get members to get to a meeting. So, again, on this one, the first sentence seems to me to be the proposition. The third, fourth, and fifth lines are basically commentary. So, is your proposition in effect that every effort regarding flexibility of time and date should always be afforded to councillors when a meeting of a working group is convened? Correct. You're happy with that?
This happens now, Mr. Chairman.
Exactly. But that doesn't mean so if members are happy to support that recommendation that's proposed by John, all those in favour please show. That again is unanimously carried. So that's number 2, B dealt with. C.
So there's been some discussions around this question, around the rental valuation. I'd like to be resubmitted to our valuer, but we actually have 2 figures. So that we go back to that valuer and we have a commercial valuation and we have a valuation for the community shop. I was the one that proposed it. I wanted it so we could benchmark the figure for commercial for the village shop. So proposal C is as read on the papers.
Okay. Any comments? Amanda?
We've already had this valuation, we've discussed this and we voted on it, so I don't see why we're recovering on ground.
I would second that, Amanda.
Any further comments? Melina?
Yes, because the proposal that was submitted was that we get a commercial valuation for the shop, and what we got was a valuation for a community shop, and the 2 figures will be very different.
Any further comments from members? So the proposal stands as before you, proposal C, that the rental valuation is re-looked at again. All those in support of that, please show. Now those against. That is clearly not carried. So, proposal D, and I don't know, John, whether you want to take D2 and D3 and D4 together, or whether you're taking them each individually.
Let's just step through them all.
Okay.
So, the rental decision is rendered null and void in the light of an error, unprovable error, on the percentage increase over 5 years. If you refer back, we should now also consider the questions going forward. So I'll consider this one firstly just as its proposal. The rental decision being rendered null and void in light of an error on the rental percentage increase over 5 years as per last month's parish meeting.
So in terms of what happened, there was a discussion and debate at the last meeting relating to the rental for the shop. In the debate, there was myself made reference to a proposal of a £3,000 rent. Within the debate, I also mentioned the fact that there had been talked about a 10% uplift each year for 5 years, and also referred to the fact that there was a request for a rent-free period, and the proposal was made that would not be given, but it would be charged from the day the shop opened. By the time we'd had the debate, the final motion got put and the words that I uttered did not include the uplift. I think it was clear, to be honest, that that was what the debate had been around and what it was. I think the proposal was clear. It was recorded in the minutes that there was an uplift. That minute was circulated as a draft minute to all members. And as far as I'm aware, no members who actually voted for the recommendation have queried that that was not what they thought they were voting for. The only people who have queried it were those who voted against, who were not in favour of the proposition anyway. So my own view on this is that it was clear in the debate what the motion was. Members understood that, and in the normal course of events, that would have been dealt with today during the agreement and signing off of the minutes. But obviously these proposals are being taken before those minutes have been signed off. Any other comments that members wish to make on? John?
So that is not my understanding, and I think it should be very clear. The wording should be clear. That part was not added, so we had a long discussion. That part was not added at the end. So you could have had two proposals or motions, one with that or one without. There certainly was one without.
If there's no further comments on that one, we have a recommendation then, proposal D.
Are we taking D to D3?
No, this is just D.
Okay.
So in terms of D, it's been proposed by John, so those in support of proposal D, please indicate. And those against, please show. That is clearly not carried, so that is D2.
D2, the rental decision when made by this council in H2 is considered null and void due to conflict of interests and incorrectly assigned special dispensations. I've read that open to the rest of this council.
And in terms of the conflict of interest and incorrectly assigned special dispensations, meaning what?
So, I sit here independently as a non-shareholder. I have never bought a share. I won't buy a share, but maybe in the future I might. But I sit here feeling very comfortable with my decision that I am not conflicted in any decisions I make as a non-shareholder. And my thoughts are that potentially it would be nice if this council considered the positions on special dispensations. That is a much bigger question, maybe one for another day.
Just to again, for members of the public who may not be following, you will have heard members around the table who have a shareholding in the shop declare that as an interest, but it is not to the point where it precludes them from having the ability to speak on an application. Advice was taken on this back from Sedgemoor, when they still were Sedgemoor. The shop shares are non-transferable unless you're passed away, basically, and they do not pay dividends. So there is not a financial benefit. If they were transferable, to be honest, it would have made my life a lot easier because I could have got rid of one of the shares that I own. I have a special dispensation. The reason is because I have 4 shares in the shop. If I had 3 shares in the shop, I would not have to have a special dispensation because it depends on the share capital that has been issued. So if and when that changes, that situation may change. As things stand at the moment, I am the only one on this council that has that special dispensation because the other shareholders do not trigger the 1% threshold which pushed me over the top. In terms of the dispensation, there's a question about it being incorrectly assigned. The council met it was our October meeting, which there was a statement of dispensation rules which were presented to the council. All the members who were present, with the exception of John, who gave your apologies that night, so you weren't actually there. But the council then went on to resolve that the council delegates the power to grant dispensations to the clerk. This power rests with the authority under section 35(1) of the Localism Act 2011, and the basis is set out under section 33(2). This resolution was agreed unanimously whilst the current clerk is on the post, but will be reviewed at any future change of clerk. So the power to give dispensations was then awarded to the clerk. Owen, yes.
Basically, I obviously hadn't come across dispensations previously, and so therefore I consulted Melanie Wellman, who was then the monitoring officer at Sedgemoor, who I have huge respect for. Melanie's always been a beacon of advice, and Melanie assured me that what we were undertaking at that meeting was entirely proper and according to statute, and there were no issues that were in any way questionable.
Melina.
On what grounds is the dispensation awarded?
On what grounds?
Yes.
Well,
Bob gives you a written request, and then there are set grounds on which you can award a dispensation or not.
yes, I mean obviously there's a whole raft of reasons, but
It's not that long.
well, okay. So what are they? You tell me, because you obviously looked at it.
I have.
The third one is another reason.
One of them is that
Just look at the third one, basically, Melina.
You'll find that the third one is a catch-all, but if it's in the opinion of the clerk,
Other
any other
reasons.
reasons, basically, it says.
maybe we shouldn't have gone along with that, didn't we?
John.
So if I may just come back on that, it'd be nice just to clarify that position on percentages that you just discussed. So I would ask if you as chair of the council would just clarify that position on percentages. And secondly, I hear about dividends, but there is very clearly in the shareholding a reference to interest payments. It's unlikely, I get that, I totally get that, it's unlikely, but it is possible. The shop went fabulous guns, and I hope it does, by the way, I hope it does, and I think it will. But there is a provision in the terms of interest payments on those shares. So I put it back to you again, and it would be nice to revisit this in the future.
In terms of the shareholding, basically, the thing that triggers you to have an interest is that you have more than 1% of the shareholding.
Okay.
So whilst there is less than, I bought 4 shares,
Mm-hmm.
£100 worth at the time when it was first issued. Once there is 10,000 shares issued, then I am below the 1%. Currently, I think I'm about 1.2%,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what triggers it needing a dispensation.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the interest payments, as I say, I took advice from Sedgemoor because I wanted to make sure that going into this that we were all okay. And if you remember the previous meeting, in terms of the 1%, we asked all members to make sure that they did not have a holding of 4 shares or more, because that would have meant they needed dispensation as well, and at that stage all members said they did not, so they did not need a dispensation. So that's the current position. Item D2, if there's no further comments, then is being put forward that the rental decision made by the council in April 23 is considered null and void due to conflict of interest and incorrectly assigned special dispensations. Those in support of that, please show. And those against, please show. That is clearly also not carried. D3.
We kind of covered it here already, but let's go through it really quickly. Requests for special dispensations need to be reviewed by a new special dispensations working group, which would be nice to be set up by this council. The right number of shares held, written, dated requests for dispensation. This is an open and transparent council.
Well, again, the last bit is a comment rather than a proposal. Members, you're aware of obviously the discussion we just had about what the policy is of this council in terms of dispensations. The recommendation from the proposer is that is changed to setting up a working group to look into the whole issue of dispensations. Are there any comments on that one?
I don't think we need to review them, Mr. Chairman. We've been working with them since I've been on the council for the last 11 years, and it's functioning perfectly adequately. I move that this be struck out, or I'd like it struck out.
So in effect we've got the proposal from John to propose it. So those in favour of the proposal, please show. And those against, please show. Clearly not carried. So D4.
I think we'll roll through that one, Bob. I think we've covered it in the other 3 proposals.
Withdraw that one. Okay, thank you. E.
E. So, if I'm able to be permitted to find the correct email. So, during last month, we received an email about short notice for a meeting, which sadly I was unable to attend due to family commitments. I have been to every meeting but one on this council. Can't speak for others, I think that's pretty good, juggling with some diary. And there was a number of communications around, of which I'll read back one, because I couldn't make, sadly, that meeting at short notice. I'll read this out. Well, perhaps, John, you've taken on more than you can handle as a member of the parish council. We all have responsibilities. I felt that was unfair, and was really leading on to something else on this council, which is a number of comments, information directed at me for whatever reason. So I'm going to just lead on from that to what is my recollection in my head of last week's meeting of sentences said to me at last week's meeting that I wasn't supposed to be there. I was pushing, by the way.
I think, John, you're straying beyond.
Okay, let me read out the comments. Let me read out the comments.
No, John, I'm not going to let you read out the comments.
Oh, right.
You have a proposition which you have put that there is no place for group or individual bullying on Brent Knoll Parish Council. That's your resolution.
Okay. I will finish just with one, Bob, if I may be fit just to say one of these sentences. Okay. Okay. This is my recollection with witnesses in this room, and I'm going to have to swear, I'm afraid. If anyone is offended by that, I'm sorry. You are talking bollocks. Like the hat you are wearing, sort him out, Melina. That was what was said to me last week at the meeting that I attended.
Mr. Chairman, I responded to Councillor Matthews on the fact that it appears always that he's far too busy. I remember one of the, unfortunately my IT skills haven't prevented me from looking it up, but one of the excuses he said was that he had to feed his chickens. And also he writes on an email dated the 18th of April 23, you replied, sadly I have children, shape commitments, so will be unable to attend. On the 20th of April you said, please accept my apologies for having to leave and return last night's excellent meeting. I had to feed and then get my 10-year-old to bed. Sorry, I know I have responsibilities and maybe you are right that I have taken on more than I can handle, but that's how I roll. I manage my responsibilities and commitments the best I can, and I like a challenge. That was all it was meant to be, John. It seemed as if you'd taken on more than you can handle. And what sort of... this all seems, tonight, all seems to be about you, John. It's not about the parish council working together as a team. It's all about you. The moment you came on the parish council, you wanted to go and set up an allotment scheme. You then wanted to set up a village plan and didn't realise how serious a commitment that was. We then have an email this week to say that you've been working quietly on promoting 2 comedy nights this month with all the profits going to a charity. Well, if you can do that, John, then you can jolly well work as a member on this parish council and not be seeking to avoid battling against everybody else. I rest my case. I'm sorry.
Melina.
I'd just like to come back on Colin's comment about it all being about John. As far as I'm aware, John isn't actually on any working groups, so at least one of his proposals didn't concern him at all.
Thank you. Again, I mean, what we have in front of us is a proposal that there should be no place for bullying, group or individual bullying on Brent Knoll Parish Council, which I can't see.
It goes
there's any
without
issue.
saying, Mr. Chairman.
we have that proposal. Those in support of that proposal, please show. That is clearly carried. Okay, we move to E2.
So this is where the work, myself and our clerk disagree on this, but I would like this parish council to standardise one work email address for our clerk.
There is one working email, it's clerk@brentknollpc.co.uk. If there is another email address that comes up on the receipt of an email, it's because that is the generic email. These emails are forwarded. In other words, our domain name is Brent Knoll PC, so therefore it simply forwards to BT. So anything you send me on either of the two emails that you're probably referring to, either will end up in my inbox, exactly the same. So I think it's a red herring, frankly, complete red herring. If I had two email addresses that were going to different places, that would be a different matter. But I don't. I have one email address.
If I may be allowed to counter that, if I wrote to MP James Heapy, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't send me an email back from his personal email.
It's not personal.
He would send me back from a work email, and he would send it back from one email. So it is an observation.
John, it's nothing like my personal email. Nothing like it.
So in effect, they're both.
They're both the same email.
I know. Yeah,
It's a red herring.
I'm thinking, Melina.
Kind of connected. Having done the SALT training last week, one of the points made on there was that everybody should use a separate email address for any council business and not their personal email address.
That's something we need to look at.
I think that's something worth putting on the agenda. Yeah.
I've written that.
And that is all I'm asking. I think it is worthy of just standardising one email. I have no major issue with the email. I just think it would be nice if we just used one email. But I'm guilty as you. I used to email by accident.
I just wonder why it appeared in here. That was why I couldn't see the logic.
It would just be nice if standard.
Okay.
So, are you happy if we don't necessarily take that, unless you want to take it as a proposal, but if we have a look at the whole email issue with members' email addresses as well, we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting, because I think we just need to sort out that. Are you happy with that? No?
Yes.
Okay. F.
Alright, now, immediate corrective action needs to be made to advertise our shop building works and to tender builders, building companies 30 to 40 miles in every direction. North, south, east, west and Brent Knoll using a newspaper. Current tendering process will be paused while this action is taken.
Yeah, I mean,
last week I attended a meeting with the CEO of Clerks, Lena did it as well on Zoom. First thing he turned around and said, if you've got a building proposal or anything like that, you haven't got to put it out to anyone. If you know a reliable builder, and a reasonable builder, and you know he's good, everything like that, put it out to him and be done with it. Get on with it, get it done, get it built. That's what he suggested last week. Was I correct?
I don't think he was talking about major projects like this. And that
it's a little build, as he says, yeah.
But that would go against our standing orders.
Yeah, but that's what he suggested last week, a little bit.
But our standing orders are what we're governed by.
can I just say, the 30-40 mile radius, I mean, we're talking here about a community shop, and surely it's got to be in the interest, public interest, council interest, that we look at contractors who are close by. In other words, they're serving our community, they're living in our community. Once you start looking 30-40 miles apart, you're talking about people coming from Bristol, Exeter. This, to me, it just seems nonsense on a community shop. That's for the community.
So I would just counter that with it as a benchmarking exercise. I don't disagree with you, Owen, that it would be great if a local builder comes through, but as a benchmarking exercise, and you yourself said it last year at the meeting, you wanted people from 30 to 40 miles away to come forward. And to quote, as a benchmarking exercise, it would be nice if we were sat, or your working group is sat, with those figures in front of them, to benchmark whatever figures come across the table when it is right. So,
yeah, we advertised it as we should have done. We've done the appropriate advertising. Melina.
On what dates was it advertised and where?
The 18th of the actual press advertising was done on the 18th of April, and it was done at the Bridgewater Mercury
Okay.
and the Burnham Hybrids Weekly News. And we have a copy here if you wish to see it.
Yes, please, that'd be fabulous. Didn't the electronic copies of the tender packs go out on the 6th of April?
I don't know, I'm much in front of you. You're probably right, yes. Quite possibly.
So anybody seeing that advert has already missed the boat because...
No, Miss Byrne. No, we've got to middle of May. There's no time scale.
Again, under our tendering policy, it stipulates that it should be put through the Village Magazine, the website, the notice boards, and it also went on via Nextdoor. Our standing orders also meant, which that obviously is the key document, which though moves in front of our standing orders, which does make comment about the newspapers. The decision was made in effect that the newspaper was also done as a belt and braces operation. Whilst we meet our criteria by doing what we did originally, there was some concern that if someone decided to try and challenge that it hadn't met our standing orders whilst meeting our tendering policy, it was better to make sure that that was covered, and so therefore it was done through newspapers as well, so that we have met both our standing orders and our tendering policy. And we have still not reached the deadline for everyone to have submitted their tenders yet, so it is perfectly open to anyone to have submitted.
And we also believe there may be a tender coming in, at least one or two, very soon. Additional tenders, probably from that advertising. So that's served its purpose, isn't it?
So as things stand, it has been advertised through the newspapers and through all the other methods that we normally do. Do you still wish to take a vote on proposal F?
I think we can skip through that one, but just make initial.
F2? Well, I mean that's...
We've covered it.
Okay. G?
Okay, so the class applies to the Council of full and edited written version of all correspondence with National Grid. It will last around system include times, dates of emails, full contact details, and a live GPS.
Right, you won, you're going on.
Thank you.
The only thing I would say to you, John, is that I sense from this that there is some idea that my integrity is at stake on this, which, frankly, that's how I feel.
Well, it's not how
Well, you can't deny how I feel that's an integrity issue. But you're very welcome to have emails at any time from any source. This computer is only ever used for Brent Knoll. I have here 8 contacts with National Grid. They're mostly to discuss dates and times, okay? And you're very welcome to have them by this form, or for me just to forward those emails on, whichever you feel most comfortable with. So, which would you prefer? You can either have them sent to you by email.
If you could email across there, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, do you wish to take a vote on that one, John, or do we just accept that's been met?
We accept that's been met, yeah.
Okay. G2.
The final 2023 bill costs, including interest payments, terms length, and potential sale of land and access rights, and including a valuation of land and access rights in the light of our standing orders, we proposed to the parishioners in a final 2023 consultation event. For the shop build project is signed off by this council. So much has changed in 12 months. It's very reasonable to expect these material dividends we've put to all our parishioners, who we will be paying for the next 25 years.
Okay. I mean, one of the things is we've heard from a number of parishioners tonight that there is a view that the finances of this particular project have changed dramatically since the November consultation. The situation was that the November consultation actually took place because we were aware that the build costs were increasing, and we were advised that the original loan that we were looking at, which was 80,000, was not going to be anywhere near sufficient. So we needed to increase that to 160,000. That was put in front of the parishioners. A circulated leaflet went to every house, advising them of that and giving the estimates as to what the costs were going to be. Subsequent to that, we have set in our budget for this year to be able to meet the loan repayments that would have been made if the loan had been taken up. So that has seen an increase in our precept. In terms of final costs, we don't have any tenders in at the moment, so therefore we cannot give the final cost. But as things stand at the moment, there has been no significant change as far as we are aware in actual costs. There is the issue that's been brought up about the cable that runs underneath the public toilets and the fact that that needs to be moved. That's where this whole discussion with National Grid has come up, and we will have a report on that later in the agenda. That at present, the indication that has been made to the council so far is that the movement of the cable will be paid for by National Grid. What they would be looking for is a contribution from the parish would be for us to make land available somewhere within our land holding for them to put a substation on. That would be transferred to them at a nil cost. So the only potential, and the thing that has been raised by members of this council, is that land has a value and therefore that should be added to the cost of the project. In terms of the costs to the parish, that does not make a difference in terms of the level of precept, because obviously it is a value of an asset, not of something that is being precepted. As things stand at the moment, we have no indication that there will be any increase to the cost of the parish. And in terms of the cost that we currently have before us, the figures that were given to the parishioners in November was based on the total cost of the loan to the parish council. It did not take into account any payments that we received from the shop to offset that. So anything that we received from the shop actually could be used either to reduce the precept or to spend on something else. So again, that doesn't have an impact on those costs. Owen.
In fact, John, it's quite interesting actually that when we went to the public engagement exercise in November, the PWLB rate at that stage was 5.2%. I looked on the PWLB website this morning. Their current rate is 4.93%, and the difference that makes is £1,100 less for the parish council to find in a full year on where we were last November. So in fact, actually the costs have come down, not gone up, and that's because PWLB calculate their rates based on a 25-year rolling period, and at the moment they are lower than they were in November. And having spoken to somebody today at PWLB, they anticipate they will go down a little bit further still. So that signifies a decrease rather than an increase.
Melina.
Can I just clarify something you said, Bob, about a leaflet went to every house in the village? Not in November 22, it didn't?
We gave a notification to the public meeting was taking place here, so they were notified that was happening.
A leaflet didn't go to every house.
There was that document there actually, and it was given out.
No,
that was given out when they got there. Because I'd asked for a leaflet drop and the cover of the Brent Knoll News, and it was
yes, we put a notice instead. So the notice went in the magazine, but it didn't go out as a leaflet. Sorry, you are absolutely right.
Thank you.
It was a previous occasion we've done it to everyone individually. Spot on. John.
Just to add to that, Bob, just your comments, there are two things on the table. There is land and there is access rights to that land. Depending on what pans out here, both have a value, both have a purpose in this village, and this is a big decision that adds on. It was never ever on the table last year. One other number that have changed from last year. This isn't a referendum. This is about communicating with our parishioners. I have spoken to a number of them. I am not a rumour monger. I see it as part of my councillor duties to speak to as many people as possible in this village. I listen to people. There are a number of people here that have no clue what is going on. And it is our, in my opinion, our job to keep them informed. Things have changed. Things are always changing. We are in a different year.
But it is also important that we make sure that the information that goes to people is accurate, because certainly members of the public have raised concerns relating to the fact that the impact it's going to have on their council tax, and that there are huge elements of extra costs that are being piled on that is going to have an impact on the village. As yet, we have no evidence of that. The build cost has not, as far as we know, changed from what we expected in November. What you are saying in terms of the value of the land and the access rights to that land may have a value, and it does have a value, but it does not have a cost in terms of an impact on the precept that is going to be levied on members of this village. And that is the concern that a number of people have raised, which is